In fact, at my marriage, 54 years ago, the master of ceremonies said, to those who followed to speak, that those who think by the inch and speaketh by the yard should be kicketh by the foot. And I think it was good advice. I also went to a function where it started at 7:30, and 15 people were giving 5 minutes each to say something about the company that was 25 years old. And the guest speaker was the Honorable P.J. Patterson, who got up at 12:30 a.m. and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I was invited to speak here yesterday." So I will try and take those warnings. First of all, I would like to say to Dr. Trevor Gardner, the faculty and board, and most of all, the cohort of the 3 branches that are here today getting their degrees. They truly represent the mind, the body, and the soul. And first of all, we have to reflect on the past. And of course, the past is the family, the friends, the children, the fun, the things we did when we were young. And they've changed a lot. I remember when I was at school, there was a term that you made gigs. I don't even know if you know what the gigs are, and the yo-yos. I don't think you do those anymore. And we had stilts and stilt fights. And we played rounders and all types of games other than the regular school games. And the best of all was kite term. You built kites. And you flew the kites, it was January, February, March, in the windy time. And at the end of the term, you put razor blades and glass bottle in the tail of the kite, and all the kite flyers took their kite up to the big field at the top, and you dive bombed until you cut the other man's cord until there was the last man standing. Those were fun days, but when I go around, all I see is people looking at little... Anyway. But, you know, you just have to thank those who really took care of you in your formative years, those who have helped you to reach this point of your life. So when you're thinking of your past, just remember those things. Now, in conquering the present, I want you to know, and a lot of you have done history, of the horrors of the world to appreciate the Jamaica that we have today more. In Turkey, in 20 years, 4 million Christians were killed. They were the Armenians and the Assyrians. In Rwanda, and this is the awful thing that happened, was colonialism destroyed countries. Colonial powers of Europe carved up Africa into various little countries, regardless of what the tribes were, what the customs were, everything were. And people don't know that in Rwanda, where 800,000 people were killed in 90 days in war between the Hutu and the Tutsi, that the Hutu and the Tutsi weren't 2 tribes. They were like the PNP and the JLP in Jamaica in the 80s. They were not 2 tribes. The Tutsi looked after the cattle, and the Hutu were the farmers and agriculturalists. And when the Germans became the rulers, they sort of separated them. And when the Belgians came, when Germany lost the First War and took over, they put the Tutsi in charge. Well, what happened, of course, was when, after they got independence, there are a lot more Hutu than Tutsi, so they took over the government, and then a plane was shot down, just like the one the other day, with the president in it, and they blamed the Tutsi, and everybody killed everybody. So those are awful things that happen in the world. And you take a city like Thessaloniki, was the third largest city in Greece. Thessalonica was a trading route across Turkey, Mideast, everywhere. And a third of Thessalonica was Jewish. A third of Thessalonica was the Arab traders. And a third of Thessalonica was Greeks. And in 20 years, there were no Jews, there were no Arab traders, there were only Greeks. Because, first of all, they had a war between the Turks and the Greeks. So they exchanged people at the end of the war. All the Turks left Thessalonica and went back to Turkey, and all the Greeks came from Turkey into Greece. So now you only had the Jews and you had the Greeks. And then 1941, Germany invaded Greece. And they took all the Jews and took them away and killed them. Germany killed 6 million Jews in the Nazi regime. That was a third of the entire Jewish population of the world. So I'm just trying to give you a background of why in Jamaica. And I could go on because the colonialists did awful things. In America, they took the American Indians and now they live on reserves, not their country. They live on reserves. What the Spanish did in Central and South America, I don't want to repeat. And after they left Jamaica, there were no Arawaks left. Gone. So these things are history. So we are in a country that is so important for you who are the future of Jamaica to really help build it, look after it, nurture it is so important. But I don't want to speak too long, so better go on. Let me tell you though, a way to really enjoy Jamaica is like one of my children who came back to join me in business. The first job I gave him was as a stevedore, and he worked with the stevedores on the port, whether he smoked or drank or played dominoes or what, but he drove the forklift and worked on the boats. And now, every year, although he is now the chairman of the company, he and 60 stevedores explore Jamaica because Jamaica is such a phenomenal country. One year, the 60 of them went up to Blue Mountain and climbed to the peak. Another year, they went to Port Antonio, and they go there Friday, Saturday, they go down the Rio Grande, they stop halfway at Miss Mattie's, and they have soup and fried chicken and whatever else they eat there, and then go on down the river. Another year, they went to St. Elizabeth and went to Treasure Beach, and they played cricket against a local team, and they went out to the bar in the middle of the ocean, all those things. But there's so many things to do and explore and see in Jamaica. So revel in it, do it, and learn your country. You don't have to go abroad. Every time I go abroad on holiday and come back, I say, thank God I come back to Jamaica. And Jamaica means honesty. To have the fastest man and the fastest woman not in the world, but in the world at the same time. Impossible. To have come 1, 2, 3, or it was really 1, 2, 2 in the women's 100, and 1, 2, 3 in the men's 200 in the Olympics, and just coming 1, 2, 3 twice in the Commonwealth. Impossible. This little tiny island. So we have the fastest runners. We have our own religion, Rastafarianism, born in Jamaica now. I don't. All the Rastafarians shouting, no. We have jerk that is going around the world. I just spoke to a manufacturer of jerk seasoning this week. He tells me he's selling 15 containers of jerk sauce abroad every month. That's going all over the world. Jerk is going to be the most national food of the world. And then we have Mosiah Garvey. He was amazing. From a little town in St. Anne to be the world leader of teaching people black pride. An amazing human being. I tell you, I heard about this wonderful miracle. And I went there when I was 17. And I go to Miami. And I go to a function. And I leave to go to the bathroom. This is a public function, big arena. And I see a sign, whites only, and another sign, coloreds only. I couldn't believe it. And then I go to New York, and I go to a golf club. And the person who took me in proudly said, you know, in our membership, we don't allow Jews, we don't allow Catholics, we don't allow colors, and we don't allow women. I couldn't believe it. And I come back and I wonder, why don't we have these problems in Jamaica? And I look at my own antecedents. Because my grandfather was a Jewish shopkeeper. He married the daughter of a Methodist minister. Her great-great-grandfather came to Jamaica as an indentured bookkeeper and married a freed slave. So my mother, she comes from a Scottish family who came to Jamaica, and her great-great-grandfather who came to Jamaica came as a missionary doctor. She was Presbyterian. And then I married a Roman Catholic. So in Jamaica, religion, in here you're half and half. Half Seventh-day Adventists, which I love, and half everybody else. And that is wonderful. It is wonderful that this is a country where you don't have the religious prejudices, you don't have the racial prejudices, and we do have class prejudices, and the only way to get rid of that is education. And it's education, 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 and I do not believe that any of the governments have given it enough attention. Anyway, I don't want to talk too long. I thought I got carried away and I'm on. But I want you to embrace the future. And I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice. Because you've only lived about, by statistics, a quarter of your life. 20s, 80s, somewhere around there. Anyway, the first is choosing a life partner. It is so important. When you know that in America, over 50% of the people who get married are divorced, but another 50% of the 50% who stayed married are very unhappy. And I hope that all of you are as fortunate as I have been. And be one of the 25% that are happy. Anyway, when you're choosing a life partner, Let me advise you. Don't just talk to each other about sex, religion, politics. Talk deeply about how you intend to have your life. In other words, how many children do you want? Don't find out after you get married he or she don't want children. Don't find out that one wants to save the money for the children's education and one wants to use the money on a house, on a car, and a thing like that. I know my wife and I did have these discussions. I wanted 6 children. She wanted as many as God would give her because she's Roman Catholic. Luckily, God stopped at 4. So you have to talk about your goals, how you're going to rear children. The one you believe in corporal punishment, does the other one doesn't. You don't want to get into a relationship where you find out later the problems. So talk about every single thing under the sun. The second thing is love your job. Love it with a passion, like I've loved mine. Love every day you go to work. It's like going to play. It's something you're enjoying. But you're young. You could have made a mistake. You could have taken a path here that you don't want to continue with. So you can do what Mavis did. Mavis was my office helper 40 years ago. Mavis went to night school. And 4 or 5 years later, she was my personal assistant. Now she is in Canada, personal assistant to a head of a big company. Then there was George, born at 12 and a half Upper King Street. When he told me that, I thought maybe a family of 6. 2,000 people live at 12 and a half King Street in Montego Bay. It's the inner city. He had a single mom. He was going to school, and I had not an industrial garage at the time. And George said to me, Mr. Hart, will you give me a summer job washing cars? So I said, sure, George. So he came to wash the cars. Now, I'd had a car washer washing me for the last 5 years. But George washed cars phenomenally after school, and then he left there and went into the garage. And he learned to be a mechanic. So when he left school, George became a mechanic in the garage. He was so good that one of the rent-a-car people came to me and said, do you mind if I take George permanently? I said, not at all, advancement. So he took George. George eventually owned his own rent-a-car company. Owned real estate company, and was president of the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce. And then one of my favorite people was Wilbur Jordan. Wilbur, when I was a parish councilor and went to a meeting in Barrett Town, a young boy just left school. He had got a job as a gardener for somebody. He came to me and said, Mr. Hart, please take me into your office, teach me accounting. I work hard, I do well. I said, all right. I spoke to my accountant, brought him in. In 3 years, he had done very well. By that time, I was building Montego Freeport. And Wilbur met one of my directors who had an accounting firm in New York. So Wilbur said to him, Mr. Back, would you take me to New York and let me become an accountant in your firm? Because he had some good basic knowledge by then. So Mr. Back took him to New York into his accounting firm. The last letter I got from Wilbur was about a year or 2 years ago. It was Wilbur Jordan and Associates. Los Angeles, California. He had 27 people working for him in his firm. And his 2 children are at university. And he was happily married. So the last piece of advice I'm going to give you is get involved. Get involved in your community. Get involved in your church. There are a humongous ways that you can get involved when you leave here. I don't know. Let me just look and see how I can cut this short. Anyway, but just living your life without taking the time to helping an elderly person or helping somebody in the community. I'm going to take you a little longer. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One was, I was in a district because I've had a number of farms. And so I try and find out if there's anybody with a problem in the district. And one was a boy whose legs were totally deformed, and he never left the house. And I called Dr. John Golding at the center in Kingston, the polio center, and asked him if he could look at the boy and see if he could help. So I sent him up. And 5 operations, and 1 year later, that boy came back with perfect legs. And it cost me nothing. He did it all for free. Another one was a young girl, and she was down by Broomdeck where we had a fish farm. And she was called what you call mash mouth. Her lips were so deformed that it covered half her face. And I went to a cosmetic doctor who I knew well, plastic surgeon they call him. I said, can you help her? And I sent her to him. And when he finished, she could have won a beauty queen contest. And the final one, and he didn't charge me, perfectly free, willing, and happy to have done it and felt a joy in having done it. And the last one was a young man who had a heart condition. He was 11 years old and he had a leaking valve, and at that point we didn't have open heart surgery together. So I went to a few friends, raised the money, sent him to America, and he became the star footballer for his school team. So it need not take money, it just takes your interest. You're willing to go out and find how you can help people and do something. It gives you maybe more satisfaction than anything else. But think of your community, in your church, as I said, in your beautification. And at the moment, there are a group of companies in Jamaica that have got together. I'm a director of it. And they've started something called Respect Jamaica. It's being led by Digicel. And over the next month or so, you start seeing it come up everywhere in Jamaica. It's going to be on billboards, on radio, on TV, on everything. And what they have decided is to start teaching respect for each other and respect for the country, first of all in their own company, and then to a broader Jamaica. And I think it's a wonderful effort. But I have spoken beyond my time, so I'll stop. But I want to thank NCU for the privilege and honor they've given me today. I really want to congratulate the Seventh-day Adventist organization, because I know half of you aren't, but it is the healthiest group of people in Jamaica. And they live the longest. And they're the most disciplined group of people in Jamaica. We have them working in our companies. Wonderful. They won't work on a certain day of the week, but that's all right. But it's an organization that look at what they do for medicine, look at what they do for education, look at what they do for health. It is a wonderful organization which I would like to congratulate, and I wish you all Godspeed.